How's it going, YouTube? How's it going, my Tag Exotic family? Today, you guys, we're talking about becoming ball python breeders. The good, the bad, the ugly, and just about the truth. You're watching Tag Exotics. Let's get it. Let's go. So, time. I know you guys are asking time. What does time have to do with ball pythons? Well, actually, time has a lot to do with it. And when I say time, I mean, do you have time to wait on an ovulation? Do you have time for some of your breeders, your future breeders, to mature? Do you have time to wait for eggs to hatch? Do you have time for some snakes to go off feed for months? Do you have time for that? Do you actually even have time to breed? Are you really dedicating your time for breeding? Are you just dedicating your time to become a ball python breeder? Time. That's the number one thing I always say with ball pythons. You have to take your time. 2, budget. You have to know already. I tell a lot of people, do your research, but going in, what's your budget? You know, and this kind of will fall into play with all the other parts that I have to this video. But a budget, when I say budget, I mean you have a budget when you're spending, investing into your ball python collection. Some people might only have maybe about 10,000 stored away, or they have that they can kind of put into their ball python breeding or get themselves started. Budget is the number one thing also that you have to kind of put into play with breeding ball pythons. Reptile racks, that goes into your budget. Goes into your budget because, well, reptile racks aren't cheap. If they're PVC, like I have, or if you have the ARS racks or Freedom Breeder racks, they cost a lot. So you have to budget to say, hey, look, I can afford the ARS racks or the Freedom Breeder racks, which are awesome racks, you know, or can I afford to get something that's already pre-made, or can I maybe just afford to do it myself? There's no problem with doing DIY reptile racks yourself. I just always just say to kind of get some help if it's your first time doing it, because you just want to make sure you're doing it right. But we'll get into that a little later. But this reptile racks, you have to really, you know, get some high quality racks. You don't just want to get something that just put together, thrown together, because after a while things start to bow. If it's some bad PVC, you have to know what type of wood to actually be using if you're, you know, adding on certain things, because things are starting to mold. You just don't want to go the cheap route with your racks, because this is what's keeping your reptiles, your ball pythons especially, safe, heated, and just making sure everything is going right inside of these racks. Feeders. This is another thing you have to look at and also put into your budget. We all know rats can become costly. As you add a new snake, you might as well add at least 20 to 50 bucks to your feeders list. And when I say your feeder list, I mean most of us already know we might spend maybe close to 100 to 200 on feeders. When I say feeders, some of you guys don't know, I'm talking about rats, mice, or African soft fur rats. You have to also put this into your budget, because you have to feed these snakes. I mean, if you don't feed them, they won't grow, they won't even breed, or they won't be up to par to breed. So your feeders, you have to put that in the budget. You have to make sure that you actually can afford to feed these snakes, not let alone just to purchase them, but also feed them. You don't have that to feed them, becoming a ball python breeder right now just might not be your cup of tea. Jeans. No, I'm not talking about the jeans you're wearing. I'm talking about the jeans inside the snakes itself. The genetics. This plays a huge part on you. This plays a huge part in your collection. This plays a huge part on your future as becoming a breeder. And I say this because don't just go in a reptile show. This is beautiful. I like this color. Never seen this before. I want this. I want that. Because what you're doing is you're scatter breeding. I like to call it scatter breeding, because if you're going in there, you don't know too much about ball pythons, you haven't did too much research, which I recommend doing that. You're going in and you're just, I want this looks like this can go with this, I like that color, I want to put this together. It doesn't work that way. you have to actually sit down and look at certain genetics that looks like they go good together. As far as if you have seen other breeders do these breedings already. Also, just checking, look and see how the genetics kind of work. It's a good percentage. What you're already thinking that you want to put together, someone already has done it a few years ago, or they're in the process of doing this breeding now. So I'm looking into your recessive to your codoms. Those are the two things. I know I see a lot of people at the reptile show. The breeder asking, well, are you looking into recessives or codoms? And they're looking at the reptile breeder like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So do your research as far as your recessives and your codoms. Recessives as far as like your het. Sometimes you always see something that says het pod, het desert ghost, het clown. Those are your recessives. Which means when you start getting hets and hets and hets, it takes a little time to put those heads together and prove them out, but it's a fun project to do. Now, you can get your visuals, and if you can't afford them in the budget plan, then your heads are going to work out for you at the time being. But I tell a lot of people, still get your heads, man. It's just fun to just put things together and just see what proves out and what other hidden genes could be hiding inside of those genetics. So you guys, right now, those are the 5 things that I kind of just like to get you guys warmed up for. There's going to be many parts to this. This is just part 1. This is just how important it is to get your ball python breeding and your ball python LLC and your just whole thing, getting it together. These are the type of things that you have to prepare yourself for. Time, budget, racks, feeders. Okay, these are the number 1 things in genetics, because all these things still fall underneath of budget. Except the time. Every other thing that I've mentioned in this video falls underneath the budget. Can you afford the feeders? Can you afford the rack to put these snakes in? Can you afford the genetics that you've seen everyone with? How can I prepare myself before I just start buying all these snakes to put into collection? I'm not really prepared for it just yet. So don't rush it. Don't rush yourself into the ball python industry. Don't rush yourself into just building a collection that you don't have a steady guidance on what you're going to do with each ball python. I tell people, every snake in your collection, every snake in this rack has a purpose. Some people just go out and just buy things just to buy because it looks beautiful and they want to put this together. But every snake in this rack that I have, and this rack's all the way to the floor, has a purpose in my collection on what it's going to do for me. From a year from now, from 3 years from now, from 5 years from now, from 10 years from now, from 20 years from now. Every snake has a purpose. Has a purpose. If that snake does not have a purpose for your collection, all you're doing is now you're just adding a snake that you're feeding 24/7 to your collection. Now, you're the type of person that you just want to pet, and we're talking about 2 different things, because this video is for a ball python future breeder like yourself. So good luck, and please look out for part 2, because I'm throwing some more gems out and other things that you have to prepare yourself to do and get ready for to become a ball python breeder. A successful one at that. Without further ado, please like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, because I do not want you guys to miss these videos that I'm dropping. Tags Exotics, let's get it. Let's go.